Welcome to the discussion of Part 3, Chapter 4. In this chapter, Raskolnikov is in his room, and Razumihin has brought his mother and sister to see him. We have Nastasia lurking in the background, as always, observing everything that's going on and listening in. And they have just reviewed Peter Petrovich's letter. And in his letter, he had mentioned trying to get Raskolnikov in trouble, really, with his mom, that he had given, that he had seen Raskolnikov give money to a woman of, notorious reputation, meaning Sonia. And now Sonia is just walking in the door at Raskolnikov's room, and everybody turns to see her. And she's absolutely mortified that he's not alone. She's probably already terrified to go there and see him herself anyway. But the fact that he's there with other people and these very respectable ladies, she feels so shamed. Even though she does not look like a prostitute, she's not dressed in her clothes that she wears when she's prostituting. She's dressed very plainly. She's dressed just like a poor girl. They would not know by looking at her that she was a prostitute. So there's no reason for her to act ashamed, but just knowing that these are well-bred ladies and that she should not, that they would not want her, someone of her character, being a prostitute near them, that would be completely unacceptable socially. She feels totally mortified. But Raskolnikov is so excited by the arrival of her in his room. He's surprised, and he can't believe that she's there, and he really wants to talk to her. And he's thinking in his head, like, oh, we just read this letter where she was mentioned. My giving her money was mentioned by Peter Petrovich. And then he remembers, well, I never really said that she wasn't of ill character. Like he didn't negate that to his mom or sister in any way. And he didn't refute that to them. And so he's like, and here she is, and this is what they will think that she is. And so he introduces her. He's like, oh, this is the woman whose father died, the family that I helped yesterday. So the mom and sister, instantly know this is the woman supposedly of notorious character. And so the mom is like a little flustered by this because, in society, that would not be good to be associating. And they're in such close quarters, which makes this very awkward, like shifting around. We've seen this in other chapters. The room is very tiny, and so it doesn't hold a bunch of people well. And so there's all this, he wants to offer her a seat next to him on the sofa, and he's like, that seems too familiar because he uses it as a bed, so he doesn't want to do that. So he's like, Razumihin, you get up, give her your chair, you come sit by me. He's like rearranging it, and she's stammering. She's super self-conscious and nervous. And she's like, no, don't go through any trouble. I just she doesn't even want to sit. She feels uncomfortable sitting next to the women. She just wants to stand up and just kind of say her piece and leave because she's just very stressed that this is also public. And she's like, I just want to invite you to the funeral and the funeral lunch tomorrow. Katerina Ivanova really would like you there. And he's like, oh, is there enough for a funeral lunch? And she's like, well, everything's going to be very simple, but it's really important to Katerina Ivanova. And as we know from having met her and how she's been described previously, she's very much wanting to live the life that she grew up in. So she grew up as a lady, and she understands how things should be done, the proper way things should be done, and that there is a proper, when someone dies, you have a funeral lunch. Like, you wouldn't just expect people to come to the funeral and not offer them a funeral lunch. And so she wants to put on these airs and graces, even though she really can't afford it. I mean, the sensible thing to do would be to bury him as, minimally cost effective as possible, but then not have a funeral lunch and keep that money for the kids. But yet she's going to go ahead and have a funeral lunch. And she just thinks that this is the proper thing to do for her husband and for appearances. So this is what she's doing, and this is what he's being invited to. And then the mom and the sister say, well, we need to go, but we really want you to be there tonight for when Peter Petrovich comes. Will you come to dinner with us? And he's like, yes, I have something that I need to do first. And they're like, you should be like getting a breath of fresh air and lying down. And he's like, there's something that I need to do. But I will be there. And then Dounia makes a point of saying to Razumihin, will you come too? And he's just tickled pink. Like he just is so excited to be continually included anywhere that she is. Like he has, he's a bit smitten with her. And so they leave, the mother and the sister leave. And the mother is kind of like, can you believe that he invited this woman into his room? And, Peter Petrovich said that she was a woman of poor character. And Dunia's like, well, he's also, a shameless liar. Or however she said it, it was, he was a shameless slanderer, I think is what she said. And you can tell that Dunia's attitude toward Peter Petrovich is changing, that being around her brother, being emboldened, kind of is giving her the strength to see it for what it is. She's understanding probably too that the whole original idea intent is falling apart. If he's not even going to be in the same room with Rodya, he's not going to make him his partner in a law firm. So she's just not probably feeling great about how this is going down, which is very upsetting to the mother, because the mother's like, well, what would, like that was our plan. Like now we're in Petersburg, what would we do? So it's interesting. And his mom is saying, like, oh, I feel so relieved leaving his room. And she's like, I couldn't have even imagined a few days ago before we got into Petersburg that I would be feeling relieved to be out of his presence. But it's so oppressive. It's just such an uncomfortable feeling. And Dunia's like, mother, he's still sick. He's not 100% himself, like trying to, smooth it over, make excuses for him. And she's just, so the mom and the daughter are not really on the same page. They're having different viewpoints of Sonia. Dounia says, oh, I'm sure she's a nice girl, mother. Like she's having faith in her brother, that just as she did when they were talking about the landlady's daughter, where the mother's like, why would he engage himself to such a poor and, for all accounts, like not a great match, not, this ugly invalid, basically. Like, why would he do that? And, that nobody says anything good about really the landlord's daughter, the landlady's daughter. Why did he do that? And, Dunia's like, I'm sure she was, a nice girl. So she's having grace for her brother and his decisions, like believing the best in him. It is interesting that Raskolnikov is drawn to these women that people in society would shun. So, this unattractive invalid girl of the landladies, like what drew him to her that otherwise men would like not be attracted to her at all? Like, why would he choose her to marry her? Why does he instantly see Sonia in a different light than everybody else? I think with Sonia, it's clear because we've gotten more backstory. He understands with Sonia why she's a prostitute, that wasn't what she wanted to do, and that she did it as sacrifice. And so he loves that about her. And he's, they say she's not necessarily beautiful, but that she has these beautiful blue eyes and she's very childlike. She's probably very diminutive, very tiny. It says her figure is almost childlike. Her action, she's very shy. So he's quite intrigued with Sonia. I think he was even before he met her, but now that he's met her, he's really intrigued by her. And so he says he'll definitely be there. And then he talks to Raskolnikov, and she's like, or to Razumihin, he turns to Razumihin. He's like, I need to talk to you about, a matter of importance. And she's like, oh, I'll let you be. And he's like, no, you stay. Like, he doesn't want her to leave. Like, he wants to be with her. And so he asks Razumihin about his uncle, Porfiry Petrovich, who he knows is an investigator in the pawnbroker's murder. And he says, well, I myself had some pledges with her. And how do I go about getting those back? I'm nervous because, we made a point of looking at the watch that Dounia had on her necklace. And I'm afraid that my mother is going to ask me about my father's watch and want to see it, assuming that I would be carrying it. She might ask me for it at any moment. And what am I going to say? I don't want her to think that I pawned it. So I'd like to get it back. Like, how do I go about getting it back? Should I go to the police station or should we go to your uncle? And Razumihin is like, absolutely not to the police station. We'll go see Porfiry. We'll go see him right now. And so they're like, great. So they leave and they're having a little conversation in front of the building where they're talking about, where Raskolnikov is like, how did you get my address, to Sonia? And they're just kind of having like kind of a little conversation before they head off in their separate ways. And he's like, where is your address? And they're kind of just like settling, like, yes, I'm going to see you later. And I'm going to come. Raskolnikov says to Sonia, like, I'm going to come see you later on today. After I take care of this business, I'm going to come visit you and we'll, have our own conversation privately. And so she walks away and she's like, oh my gosh, she's going to come see me where I live, which I'm presuming is probably where she works, maybe. And she's just like, I don't know if she's thinking. She saw his room. I think one of the things that surprised her the most, and one of the things that kind of flustered her the most when she was in his room, was she saw like what a hovel it was, and that she made a comment or a notation in her mind that he lived in just one room. Like, he doesn't have an apartment where it's like multiple rooms, where he's not somebody who has money to give to a widow for funeral expenses. Like, she can tell by his living conditions that was all he had. She's like, you gave us everything. Like, she understands that he gave her way more than what he could afford to give her, because his living conditions are as poor, if not worse off, than hers. So she goes to her, she's going back to her place, and there's a man following her. It says that there's a man, and he's an older gentleman. He's about 50, although he looks pretty good, young for his age. And he has a cane, and he's noting her. He was watching the three of them, and he was particularly looking at her and Raskolnikov, and he follows her. And as he's following her, he's realizing that she's going in the same direction as where he's living. And when she gets up to the door, he realizes he's right next door to her. And the way that the buildings are, it's almost like condos where it's multiple levels, but they're like, so like this would be one, and there's multiple floors, and then right next to it would be another one and multiple floors. And so you would there's separate entrances into the doors, but at some point there is a wall that is shared between these two apartments. So that'll be significant later, so that he is right in the next building with her. And he's like, oh, you're lodging there? I'm lodging right over here. And she's just like, oh, okay, And there's no context given. So it's like, is he interested in her because she's prostitute? Like, does he know that? Has he been having an eye on her? Why was he watching her to begin with? So we don't know. And that it ends there with that. But he will be a significant character later on. And so we want to just take note of that, interesting exchange. Why was he there in front of Raskolnikov's house? Was he following her, or was he there watching Raskolnikov? Or we don't know anything about him at this point. And then Razumihin is taking Raskolnikov now to go see his uncle Porfiry to try to get back the pledges, or to find out how does he get back his father's watch. And Raskolnikov is thinking in his mind. We have a lot of internal dialogue. So you've got Razumihin externally talking to Raskolnikov, and then you have Raskolnikov with a lot of internal dialogue about what he thinks about Razumihin. Like he's, really simple, and like why, he's like talking this way, and like he's thinking about the uncle, and he's like, this is going to be the moment of truth. When I meet this uncle who's investigating the murder, I'm going to be able to tell whether he thinks I'm a suspect or not by how his face is when he sees me. And so he's, trying to think, like he's trying to game plan, like how is he going to play it off? He's like, I don't want to come across suspicious, is what he's worried about. And he's getting more worried about it because Razumihin is like, look, yesterday when I walked you home, I was drunk. I said a bunch of stuff. And he's like, my uncle's really been looking forward to meeting you. And Raskolnikov's like, why is he looking forward to meeting me? Like, is it because he's a suspect in the murder? And Razumihin's like, oh, well, because you've been sick and I've been talking a lot about you. And then that business with Zametov. And it's like, oh, that's not great, because Zametov is the one that Raskolnikov was being super weird to in the restaurant, acting like he was the murderer right before he had planned on turning himself in, when he felt like he had nothing to lose by behaving that way. And Zametov went straight from that interaction to the party where he talked about it. And Porfiry was at that party. And so, then Zossimov was in there going, well, he's acting like that because he's borderline insane. He's madman. And, so there was all this talk about Raskolnikov at this party. And he understands it. And Razumihin kind of understands it too. And that he was like kind of maybe an instigator, or like put fuel on the fire. But Razumihin is like, oh, the more I learn about you, Raskolnikov, the more I understand like why you've been behaving this way. So he's like, once Razumihin finds out that Raskolnikov had pledges with the pawnbroker, he's like, well, now it makes total sense that in your delirium that you would have been talking about like, oh, rings and different things that a pawnbroker would have, because you were thinking about that you sold this stuff to the pawnbroker, and you'd have that shock at the police station where you found out that she was dead. So of course, in your delirium, in your dreams, you're dreaming about this pawnbroker. It's on your mind. And, that's why you seem so interested when we're talking about it. So it clears up everything for Razumihin. He feels like it's every day his friend is more and more exonerated, and he feels like great, where Raskolnikov is like, it's not great for me because I actually did kill the pawnbroker. So he's nervous, whereas Raskolnikov's feeling very light about everything, or Razumihin's feeling very light about everything about his friend, and feeling guilty for probably have made people think Raskolnikov is guilty. He's relieved that he's finding out, even more that could exonerate his friend. Raskolnikov doesn't know what he's walking into. And so he starts to do something. It's very clever. He starts, as they're approaching the door to Porfiry, to start to tease Razumihin about kind of being smitten with his sister. Like, oh, I noticed that you were very different today when you were at my rooms. And he doesn't straight out mention his sister, but it's like, oh, the way you were sitting, you're on the edge of your seat, and I could see you blushing. And he's calling him Romeo. And Razumihin's getting embarrassed. He's like, you pig, stop, saying that. Don't say that. And so they're joking back and forth as they get closer to the door, which is what Raskolnikov wants. He wants Porfiry to be able to hear this very lighthearted joking back and forth between two friends, because someone who has just killed a woman and could be suspected of murder would not be behaving in this very joking way. They would be acting nervous and agitated by going to see the lead investigator on the case. And Raskolnikov doesn't want that to be the first impression of Porfiry. He wants Porfiry to see him as, oh, this very lighthearted and great relationship with his nephew. And so that is what they are doing. They're joking back and forth right before they get to the door. And in the next chapter, we're going to see his meeting with Porfiry and how that goes. So meet me in part 3, chapter 5.